Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to my channel. It is Christian here, and you are tuned in for more of my 2 cents. I mean, what more can I say? We've come a long way, and I am so excited to jump into our topic of discussion today. Bars. Haven't blushed y'all in a minute, but y'all finna get it, okay? We're growing over here, okay? We are growing, and I am so excited, and I'm so grateful that you decided to tune in to park on my street and to allow me to share my 2 cents with you, right? Like, no judgment zone over here. We're just giving good raw opinion and not using any scriptures to back it up. Y'all be dropping them in the comments though, and I love how y'all use the scriptures when you do reference them over here, because it's not the average way to defend or to make me wrong. It's to prove some of these believers, right, as hypocritical, right? Hypocritical and double-minded. And so I love to see it. I don't have no problem with it. And as long as we're not arguing, but we are having mature, thought-provoking conversations that really do add to each other's foundations, I don't have no problem with it. So if you're new here, welcome. If you're coming back, thank you so much for joining again for another video. Don't forget to like the videos, to comment if they, provoke something in you, or if you can relate to them, and subscribe to the channel. I love watching the numbers grow and go up, because it means that the message and the content is connecting with other people. I'm not here just to sway anybody. I'm actually not here to sway anybody, period. Not just to. I'm not here to sway anybody at all to think the way that I do, but I like getting my thoughts out because I know other people feel the same way that I do. I know somebody has thought some of these things, but you dare not say it out loud. So it's good. You're safe here. Don't worry about it. Today, we're going to be talking about the FLDS. Oh my goodness, the FLDS. And let me get what that acronym stands for. Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Y'all used to see them commercials with them little pamphlets, them little booklets that they would send you if you called them. They'll send you a booklet from the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I did not know that this is what they were doing. What that guy on TikTok. This is what y'all giving. We don't want it. Okay, keep your pamphlets. Stop printing them. Actually, break the printers, unplug it, wrap the cord up, and set the machine on fire. Burn it, break it. Oh my goodness. So I did a short the other week asking if you guys would like for me to give my 2 cents on Keep Sweet, right? On the Keep Sweet of it all on Netflix. Keep Sweet, Pray, Obey. And it is a documentary with a lot of testimonials and a lot of information and background on the taking down of good old Jeffs. Okay? Good old Jeffs. And you have to understand that Warren Jeffs, who is now in prison, it started with his father. Okay? And I don't really know. His name was Rulon. So you have Rulon Jeffs, which was the father, and then you have Warren Jeffs. And you definitely should watch this documentary. I like to watch documentaries that are cult-based and has somewhat of a spiritual connection, because I like to see what people fall for when it comes to spirituality and religion. I love to see what people fall for, because having a psychology interest and a background, I always like to see people's minds and how they can be broken down, or how people can be manipulated, or how weak the mind can be, as well as how strong and powerful it can be. Because the mind, they say the mind is a terrible thing to waste, but it's so true. Because if you give your mind over to someone else, they're going to do what they want to do with it. And then if you use it for evil or for good, it can benefit you, or it can hurt others, or vice versa. This is the situation where the people's minds were weak, but the mind of the person controlling them was very strong, committed, focused, powerful, determined, and all of the above. And this is just a tale of people giving over their freedoms for religion. Literally deciding to sign up for a cult and give their daughters over to grown white men for their sexual deviancy. And it was disgusting. Let's get into these notes. But before I do that, there are 3 points that I always have to say before we get these conversations underway. Number one, you are not alone. I feel the same way that you do, and so do many of us here. Number two, you are not crazy. If you think you see it, it's happening. And number three, God still loves you, okay? Don't let anybody ever make you forget or feel otherwise, all right? So let's talk about it. We're going to go episode by episode, line upon line, precept upon precept, so you can get the gist. But I short noted a lot of these things. In episode 1, there was an introduction, talk about ruling Jeff's the father, how he started everything, the buildup of the actual religion and what, because you have to have a foundation, like you have to have a foundation of why you should be doing it and what you're going after in these religions. And this is for all religions, right? Not just FLDS, I'm gonna call them FMLA, not just for FMLA, but for all religions, Christianity, being a Muslim, being a Buddhist. There are foundational principles that you're supposed to abide by. There are belief systems and values, but there's also an ultimate goal. Like for Christians, it's heaven. For Jehovah's Witnesses, it's heaven too, but it ain't really like it's a different breakdown where only a couple people are getting in. All right. Everybody don't get to go to heaven if you're a Jehovah's Witness. Even all the Jehovah's Witnesses don't get to go. So it's one of those kind of things where there's an ultimate goal that you are all supposed to be trying to reach. Got it? Okay. For FMLA, FLDS, the more wives men had, the higher up they were considered in the faith, in the religion. Okay. Episode 1 covers this, talks about this from the male perspective who were in the church, as well as the women who were in the church. And I love that they had actual members who had either been separated from the church because they didn't abide by some rules, or Warren Jeffs put them out because of control. He wanted to pretty much get all the smart people out, people who had good backgrounds as engineers or business owners or whatever. The less sense knowledge you had for self, the better you were for this organization. If you had the power of thought, they didn't want you. That's why these videos are important, because I'm just here to ring the alarm on you actually using your brain for free for you. Because if you use it for someone else, that's going to cost you. And it did cost the members of FMLA. Let's get back to it. So they called it the Celestial Kingdom. What? Like, where do these people get these names from? It's like the Gucci of it all. It's like the Versace, right? It's like the Ralph Lauren. It's like the Yves Saint Laurent. It's like all of those names that you're like, where they come from? It sound cute though. Like it sound fancy. Like I like it. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not saying that I'm not gonna buy it, but I I just wonder who came up with the names. The Celestial Kingdom is up on that line. Like, where do y'all get these names from that just sounds, and nobody questions it? Made it up. These are man-made principles and religions. Man-made, you guys. So it was called the Celestial Kingdom. You'd be considered a god, and you would be able to create spirit children. The more women, the more wives a man had in FMLA, the more powerful they were considered in the Celestial Kingdom. That does not exist. Let me just tell you guys this right now. And if you're still a part of FMLA, I want to tell you today that you're not going there. It don't exist, and nobody cares about you having a lot of wives and women that you're sleeping with, children that you're impregnating. Let's be very clear. That's why Warren Jeffs, like, in a nutshell, like, I ain't gonna even kid you so I can get to the point. In the beginning, in case you want to end this video, Warren Jeffs ultimately went to prison because he, as well as other men in FMLA, FLDS, were marrying and sleeping and impregnating, sleeping with and impregnating teenage girls, like 13, 14-year-old girls. Be very clear here that they were using young women for their sexual deviancy. They were using women, period. And they were getting younger and younger with their desires for these women and marrying them off to other men in the organization. They were putting young boys out of the organization by the droves so that they wouldn't be competition for the older men in the organization who wanted these young wives. They got to a point where they were so disgusting, they didn't want to give the girls who were age appropriate to the age appropriate boys. They wanted the young girls for themselves. This really happened on American soil. Yes. Under the guise of religion and salvation, and doing this to get into the celestial kingdom. And these men liked it. They're still doing it. This is still an organization this is still a cult that still has land, still has members, still collecting money, still sending money into Warren Jeff's people, to the hierarchy. Since he's in prison, he's still running it from his prison cell. So y'all have to understand this has not been shut down, y'all. It's still going on. But we're going to get into it. So that covers episode 1. Women had no rewards or promotions in life other than being a wife. So while men had the celestial kingdom to look forward to, women had nothing to look forward to. There were no promotions for them within the ministry, within the organization. Y'all just get to be here, have our kids, and make us feel good in our manhood. And we're gonna be able to create spirit children. I don't know what that is, but whatever. Okay. They ripped entire sections out of the books. So they also had their own schools in their community, their own school in their community. So you have to understand that with this organization, with this cult, Jesus, let me call it a cult. With this cult, they kept everybody in their community. So while they were still living amongst other humans and individuals, they still had to, excommunicate themselves from other lifestyle and livelihood around them. So they made their own community, if you will. And it got to the point where eventually they would want to shift that. Warren Jeffs would want to shift that to their own land to get them away from all other society, views, opinions, information, access, resources, so that they could dominate and manipulate as they would desire. So in their school, they taught the young girls, the women, what they wanted them to learn. That it pretty much was for us, right? For our glory, for men's use of you. You don't have your own desires or will or interests. You're to do what we want you to do. It was so much that these young women did not know. And their mothers didn't even teach them. Their mothers were too busy being the 54th wife to Rulon Jeffs, the father. So the father, when he died, how many wives did he have? Let's see. I think he had 76. I think Rulon Jeffs had 76 wives when he passed away after having a stroke. He never really recovered from that. But Rulon Jeffs died with 76 wives. And I think the youngest one was like 16 or 17. And his other wives were older than these girls. It's like there was no reason. There was no reasoning for some of these women. A lot of these women and men joined FLDS when they were adults. So it's not like they came into this thinking it was normal for this man to marry kids or to have 76 wives. They just threw away all logic in order to exist in this cult. Okay, so one of the women who was giving, an interview in her little, interviews from being a part of the church, she said that they ripped entire sections out of the books in their school. They took out the section on the reproductive system. They took out the section about solar systems. Their science books was missing so much pertinent information because it was things they didn't want them to question. They wanted them to pretty much feel like Rulon Jeffs was God, which they did. They did believe that he was God and that he would never die, right? That if anything, he actually was going to have kind of like this, what do they call that? Benjamin Button. He was going to have a Benjamin Button situation where time was going to roll back for him. He was going to have a Walmart rollback type of lifestyle. He wasn't going to get old and he wasn't going to die. But the lie detector test determined. Okay, we see the results, people. He's gone with the wind. But they believed, right? So you remove all of this information, but you call it a school, but you're only teaching your own indoctrination. That doesn't sound like a problem. No red flags went off for any of these women, but even if it had gone off, they still wouldn't have had the resources to leave, right? So that was the unfortunate part about it. The women didn't have connection and relationship with their daughters where they were discussing with their daughters how you got pregnant, right? What it meant to have sex and to actually reproduce from that. These young girls went from being teenagers to wives and didn't even know that sex existed. There were multiple women who gave testimonies and interviews that said on the night of their wedding to men they did not want to be with, grown, nasty old men, these young 17, 18, even 14-year-old girls testified and said they went into their marriage bed that night confused about what the man was doing to them. They were very confused and afraid because they didn't know what sex was. So you have pretty much cut them off from all access to any information, even regarding their own body and their own desires, right? To get them and then expose them to it, and they're fearful, afraid, confused, but they don't have friends they can talk to about it, and their mother is too busy being wife number 52 to even explain it to you. So your children weren't even your own in FMLA. You didn't get a chance to sit down with your daughter and teach her how to wash clothes, fold clothes, be a wife. Her future was going to be what your future was: slavery and bondage. Very unfortunate. Next. So after this happens, Rulon Jeffs falls sick over time. And it's just so sad how arranged marriages were allowed. He was the final say on that. He would say, you know, he was the prophet, right? So God would speak to him and show him who these women needed to be with. Usually it was him or another higher up man that he deemed worthy of being in the celestial kingdom. So they were just handing out women as wives, as tokens, right? Like imagine going to the arcade and getting tickets for every game you play. These men were excited to have more wives. There was one man in the interviews that was saying he felt like he wasn't worthy because he only had 3 wives. He wanted to know what he was doing wrong that God was not giving him more wives. He did not feel worthy because he didn't have enough wives, y'all. He wasn't sleeping with enough people. He didn't have enough women in his household because Rulon hadn't given him any more wives. Okay. What are we talking about? Humans. So when you think about this in the context of religion, you ask yourself, why did y'all stay after you realized it wasn't what they said it was going to be? Well, it depends on how strong or feeble-minded you are when you first start in some of these organizations. That's another video I'm going to do about trauma bonds in church. How people literally go from one ostracized or bad relationship or engagement with family or social structure to religion. It's almost like gang affiliation, if you will. You know how gangs recruit kids who don't have, you know, anybody to connect with, no family, no support system, no friends. That's easy because the gang makes you feel like they're family. That's what it is with church. Come on over here. We'll accept you as you are. And we're going to change you too. Ta-da. This is what happened. All right. So Warren Jeffs took over after his father became ill, had a stroke, didn't recover. He was still alive, but he wasn't in his top mind, which I don't think he was in his top mind before the stroke either, but that ain't my business. He wasn't able to do the day-to-day, control, manipulation tactics, taking people's money, all of that, because these people were still working. This was free labor for FLMA, and that's in the notes. There's going to be a part 2 for this video, okay? So Warren Jeffs created the curriculum that was specifically for the women of FLDS. And in their school, they were really taught to have nothing in your brain. There was nothing in your brain other than doing the prophet's will. So you're teaching that, you're pushing that, you're promoting that, you're encouraging that consistently. There is going to be no rebuttal, no refuting of that principle. And the men, they were only there for their own personal gain. So they weren't going to try to take control of their household. The men didn't even have control in their homes. It was the prophet. It was Warren Jeffs. It was Rulon Jeffs' will. They gave you what you were supposed to have. And you brought everything you had to the storehouse and they divvied it out amongst the community. Very disturbing. So when Warren took over for his father ruling, after having a massive stroke, they said this is when the teachings became scary, full of fear, full of punishment, talking about God destroying the earth and all of the Revelation book, the book of Revelations, and really pushing that punishment and that fear very heavily. So it was kind of a shift in power once Rulon became ill and was no longer the main leader. Warren took a turn for the worse. Things wasn't as, kind of loving and kind and family oriented. The women had to start wearing their hair a certain way. There were like videos, and I'm looking at this documentary like, damn, they had a lot of good resources. This is a multi-million-dollar revenue generating organization, y'all. Like, you have to watch it. They literally had the business owners of their organization give their businesses to the church. These people signed over their businesses to the organization, y'all. Successful engineering businesses, successful construction businesses. These men who were smart and had contracts with people like Walmart and Amazon handed their business over to Warren Jeffs. And he became the owner of these men's businesses while the men worked for free. And Warren Jeffs and FLDS collected the checks for these contracts to build, to do buildings, infrastructure. They have free labor. They brought all of this out in the documentary. FLDS is literally a free labor entity. It's a human trafficking organization. Not just sex trafficking, but it's a human trafficking organization where they get the cheapest labor and they have so much profit margin for, money because they don't have to pay for labor. That's the most expensive cost in any business. You get these men in your organization to sign over their businesses to you, right? You start collecting checks on all of the contracts that they have already developed and all of that. You train the men in your organization to do the work for these contracts, and then you provide them with food, shelter, and women. Yes, that's the exchange. They're not getting monthly or weekly paychecks or stipends. You get to live in the FLMA community. No lie, y'all. They're gone. That's why I say don't check your brain at the door just because you've chosen a religion. You can still think for yourself. You should still think for yourself. These people did not. Let this be a cautionary tale. So the Olympics came to Salt Lake City after Warren Jeffs began his reign of being the leader, and he made it doom and gloom. All right. This was his time to strike fear and to get the folks out of here. He needed to shift these people to another place in order to have full control. There was land and Short Creek. Well, they went to Short Creek, and it was right outside of Arizona. They went to Short Creek, which was very hilly. A lot of people did not go out there and access it. It didn't really, it was like a lawless kind of land. It wasn't even like inhibited by other humans. So it wasn't a developed area. And Warren knew this. Warren was a smart man. He wasn't smarter than these other men he was stealing stuff from. No, he actually was, because they let him take it. But I digress. He was smart enough to do his research to find land or an area that he could have full control without anybody watching him, because what they were doing was illegal, right? Like having multiple wives, even though it was not like licensed or anything like that. You can't have a polygamous lifestyle in the cities and the states that they were in. You just couldn't, and they were doing it. And so he used the Olympics that was coming to Salt Lake City, Utah. He used that as an example and a reason to say that God showed him, the prophet, that if the Olympics came to Utah, the world was going to be destroyed. It was going to be the end of time, because it was a hellish activity full of sin and just filth and all of that coming, and they needed to escape it and get away from it so that they would not be destroyed with the rest of the world. So we're going to leave Salt Lake City to go to Short Creek, and when the Olympics come, the Lord gonna kill everybody except for us in Short Creek. Got it. So everybody left. Everybody went to Short Creek with him. So they testified that the organization grew from 1 to 2,000 people to 8 to 10,000 people when they went to Short Creek. Literally, the organization grew from 2,000 people to 10,000 people. He was able to captivate and migrate all of these human bodies from one thought that he created, that the Olympics was going to be the end of the world. The Olympics came and that did not happen. So you know what he told the people? It was a test from God. He just wanted to see if they would do his will. Do you know they didn't leave? They still believed him. Because what I talked about earlier in school, they were being taught not to question the prophet. Okay. You shouldn't have anything in your brain other than the prophet's will. If the prophet told you that you were supposed to marry someone, are you questioning the prophet? Are you doubting the prophet? Are you calling the prophet a liar? Y'all not seeing no similarities here with your modern day church, your Christianity? That anything you do, it's always God's will when they want you to do what they want you to do? Throw God's name in it, child. Get him to do it quicker. You know, you ain't gonna go up against God, are you? The man of God. Like I'm still having people tell me, like comment on that short that I did about Kevin Samuels and Jamal Bryant a couple of months ago. People are still, I guess now, just seeing the short. And there are women that are still talking smart to me on that short about them. Keep your mouth off the man of God. Find you something to do. You need to go pray. What? You mad because I said that this man shouldn't have said anything about a YouTube content creator? Okay. It's idolatry. It's idolatry. It would take nothing probably for Jamal Bryant to have a cult, like an active cult. He has a church. But if he wanted to have a cultish following, he could. He could do what Warren Jeffs did. It's not hard. Y'all, it's not hard. It just takes commitment and dedication. That's all. You just have to decide you want to control people this much, and you can do it. Especially with women. I'm telling you a story about this man doing it to thousands of women for their sexual pleasure and deviancy. And the men did not even try to course correct. So I know what I'm saying is not false, but it just takes you actually applying this and looking at this situation and saying, dang, this can happen to any of us in church. Is this happening to us at church? Ask yourself that. Is this happening to me right now where I attend church? Was this the path I was on when I was in church? Is this the path some of my family members are on? Since they're so committed to church. It's not far-fetched, you guys, that all of the things that I'm explaining and expressing would be possible. And it doesn't have to come in the form of polygamy, right? It's the control of money. I ain't doing no part two. I don't even want to talk about this no more. I ain't doing no part two. What I've explained is enough. It should be enough, right? Like the women, the compliance. There were people who said they were afraid of disobeying more than they were of death. They were afraid of disobeying Warren Jeffs more than they were of dying. You have people literally allowing their daughters to be married off to 50 and 60 and 70 and 80-year-old men at the age of 14. You're talking about young girls who married their first and second cousins, had to sleep with their cousins. You're talking about humans who were used for slave labor. And when it all came down to it and Warren was caught, it started catching up with him because one of the girls got out. Well, she left. Because they weren't holding them hostage. You just had to actually want to leave, right? So they weren't holding these people hostage. They just didn't have the thought process to actually leave the wired fence. So one of the young ladies did leave, who actually set off the chain of events for him to actually get caught. And so to get prosecuted. But in the process of him getting prosecuted, he knew that things were starting to come down on his head. He fled and started taking vacations. They said they didn't see Warren Jeffs for months on end. This is what I'm going to get to before I close. This is going to be a long video. And I'm not sorry, because I'm not doing a part 2. I'm not going to talk about these sickos again. The thing that got me was that when everything started raining down on him and the wall started closing in, he came up MIA. They bought new land in Texas, in a part of Texas, where they were going to build a whole compound. It was huge. It was a huge compound. Look it up. They're still in this compound today, you guys. So he actually started funneling money for this compound. They started putting money into this build out, and it was happening very fast because they had the resources and the free labor. And so he came up missing with one of his favorite wives. And it was, they showed the pictures. Once it came out, Warren Jeffs had been at Disney World. Warren Jeffs was wearing regular people clothes. Warren Jeffs was in strip clubs. Warren Jeffs was spending and blowing their money. Warren Jeffs was out here in luxury cars, Lamborghinis, and all of the following, living it up while these people were in bondage meanwhile back at the ranch. This man knew what was about to happen to him as far as prosecution, but he was out there living it up, sexing it up, while he taught y'all that fun was a sin, that you should fear the prophet, right? That you should give your children, your young girls, that you should renounce your own sons out of the camp so that there are more girls available for the older men. This man was out here at Disneyland without his kids. All probably 40 something of them. This man was out at Disneyland looking real weird, might I add. When they pulled him over, when they did capture him, he was in the back seat of a little Jeep, looking like he had just left, what's that festival? That rock festival where they used to be outside. I ain't talking about the Coachella, the one back in the day, like with Kiss, in them. He looked, Woodstock. He looked like he had just left a Woodstock concert. This man was out of his mind, enjoying the earthly things while he had the people back at the ranch in complete slavery and bondage with fishtail braids and long dresses with long johns underneath it. Women. And you out here holding it up. In the name of who? The celestial kingdom? Okay. So the games that keep being played in our faces, right? As believers. You'd do better to worship your creator at the crib. That's all I'm saying. Keep your money. You can save 15% or more by switching to home worship. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. It's the best, it's the greatest MLM scam that you can ever sign up for, because it promises you a lot, but it never gives you anything in return. Never. And I'm talking about church attendance. I'm not talking about being a religious person or a spiritual person. I'm talking about church attendance and being under a leader. There is an ulterior motive for all of them. And I'm not sparing anybody at this point. I'm just not. I don't care. I don't care who I know or who I've seen. And yeah, he's a real one. He's good. He'd never do that. All of them have it in them. And you would too. Somebody hands you 100+ people to listen to you every week, to give you money every week. That's power. You feel it flowing through your veins. It's like becoming Venom. You know what I'm saying? Off of Spider-Man. You feel it just rising up in you like, oh my goodness, I was a good person. I was red and blue, but now I'm black, child. Like you just finna, the veins is just in you. Because it is the very nature of any human to be accepted, to be in control, right? To have the ability to lead, to influence, and to impact people. And when somebody gives that to you, it's very dangerous if that person doesn't have the right intent, motive, or accountability. We see that with politicians. But who are me? Who are me? So I'm so grateful that they got this scumbag. I'm so grateful that while families have been broken up, there were women, you know, in some of these interviews who have 8 and 14 children that they have not seen in years because they're still in FMLA. They're still there on the compound. Even though Warren Jeffs is in prison, these kids don't want, they're adults now. They don't want to know their parents because they weren't raised by their parents. They were in a home with their parent, but they weren't raised by their parent. Their parent was following the prophet, and the prophet was telling the parents how to raise the children and then taking the children where they wanted them to be. So the parents didn't have any say. The mothers testified multiple times how they would just wake up and the kids would be gone. Somebody would have come and packed up the kids and took them to the new compound in Texas from Arizona. Like, they were never consulted like parents normally should be because there was no respect for them. You are just a conduit for more bodies to be born. You don't have any rights here. You don't have any rights here. And this is what began me with how the church likes to try to control state government, politics, laws, and legislation. You do know that y'all have a lot of messed up stuff going on in y'all own organizations, right? This is sickening. And y'all not rallying the troops to shut this down. But you want to shut down political, public legislation, and y'all got problems right in y'all own organizations. Get out of my face. Get out of my face. Like Martin, out of my face. Out of my face. It's very sad and disheartening. The amount of money that he was able to funnel through. They said at the end that a lot of the men were collecting, like, it wasn't the tithes, but they was collecting the money from the people. The people in the compound, when Warren just came up missing, was in Disneyland in Maseratis, not even Maseratis, Lamborghinis and Ferraris. They said that they were collecting money from everybody in the community and sending Warren Jeffs $300,000 a week. $300,000 a week. The man said it. Watch the documentary. That was in episode 3. They were sending this man $300,000 a week. And they had got to the point where I think they seized some of the money the first time. The government did, or law enforcement caught them because they were trying to catch Warren Jeffs. And I think they caught his brother trying to make a drop to him of money. And they got smart. They went and bought up a whole bunch of canned goods. Listen to me, y'all. These are people who are supposed to be believers that are doing illegal shit to get money to a man. Grown men were doing this work to get money to another grown man while their family was lacking on the compound with no food, no resources barely. They were funneling cash to this man while he was out doing God knows what. They bought canned goods, took the cans off, the tops off of them, emptied them out of the contents, and put money, was rolling up balls of money into canned goods and then resealing them to get Warren Jeffs $300,000 a week. If y'all cannot do math, that is $1.2 million monthly that they were sending this man up until he got imprisoned. All right. So, yeah. And then it was the girl who got married at 14. She left. They tricked her back into the cult. And by the time she was 24, she had 6 kids. From 14 to 24, she'd had 6 kids. Keep Sweet, Pray, Obey. It's on Netflix. I'm not getting paid for this review, but I'm definitely here to tell you that it's sickening, it's disturbing, and it's real. All right? Okay. I don't have any other words for you guys. Keep your mind about you. Keep your wits about you. Do not give up your freedom for anything, for anyone, at any point. That's all you got. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Don't forget to like the video, comment, share, or subscribe to the channel. I would love to add you guys to our 2-cent crew, because we can always use more people, honey, because, I mean, we got a lot of dollars now. Now, you know, we got a lot of people. We got a lot of dollars. It is more than my 2 cents, but it is also your freedom that is at stake for logic and understanding. So I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thank you guys for tuning in. Bye.